Good evening to the 12th grade students, parents, and high school counselors. Thank you so much for joining us for the Admissions 101 workshop series by Knowledge at KPT. Today, we have an esteemed institution who's joining us today. We have Ms. Taryn Smith, who is a Deputy Director of Admission from Rice University, who will be presenting to you, as you've seen on our online schedule, navigating selective admissions from college search to funding your education. And then, of course, Ms. Taryn Smith will be sharing more information about her university, Rice University as well. And I know we got a lot of fantastic feedback and enthusiasm leading to this session. So thank you so much to all the students who were able to attend and have started attending. And I'm sure we'll have many more as we go along the way. Students, parents, and counselors, as you know, all the questions are to be posted in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. So it will be easily accessible for Ms. Taryn to access your questions, as I'm sure she'd love to answer all of your wonderful questions. Having said that, I would like to now welcome Ms. Taryn Smith. Ms. Taryn, thank you so much for joining us. We know it's a very busy time of the year, so thank you for your kind and valuable time. I wish you the very best for the presentation session, and I'll be now handing over the stage and microphone to you. Thank you once again.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. I'm so excited to be able to get to connect with everyone. I should actually be in India right now, and so I'm so disappointed that I can't be there, but I'm certainly looking forward to making my way back there when it's safe. So as Kunal said, my name is Taryn Smith. I'm Deputy Director of Admission at Rice University. We're located in Houston, Texas. And it's such a wonderful institution. And as he had mentioned, I'll speak a little bit more specifically about the institution in the second half of the presentation. If you are interested in more information about Rice, I'm going to drop a link in the chat box. Of course, use the Q&A to submit any questions that you have, but in the chat, I'm going to post a link to a form if you're interested in more information from Rice. So you can take your time to complete that either during the session or after the session. That link will be live until tomorrow. So please go ahead and fill that out if you would like. But first, we're going to get started talking about navigating highly selective admission. So what does that mean, actually? So there are around 100 schools in the United States who are considered highly selective. And that just means that we receive more applicants than we have spaces for. And so we're admitting a smaller percentage of students compared to some other institutions. But there's a lot to take into consideration when you're selecting schools to apply to, whether it's within the United States or outside of the United States. So starting, there we go. So starting pretty broadly, I'm going to talk about the college search overall, whether you do decide to apply to a highly selective institution or other institutions. There are a lot of resources out there that will help you narrow down your college search. And we really encourage students to use a variety of resources to learn about the different types of institutions that are out there, especially considering you might be applying to schools outside of your country. And so you want to connect with a variety of resources, whether it's your school's counseling office, other college search engines or external resources. Kunal Parekh is a perfect example of the way that you can learn about institutions, using the institution's individual websites, their social media connections, watching videos on YouTube. There's so many different ways to learn about institutions, even in this socially distanced world. And I would say that a lot of institutions have kind of, improved the way that they've been sharing virtual information, providing more virtual information sessions and chats and a variety of ways to connect with the counselors, at those schools. And so there are so many different ways for you to learn about the institutions. And so what type of information should you be looking for when you're using these types of resources? In the US, we have public and private institutions. A lot of times the highly selective institutions are private, but that's not a requirement or that's not exclusive to highly selective institutions. There's also plenty of private schools that aren't highly selective. But the big difference between a public and a private institution in the United States, the biggest part really does have to do with the funding. So where does an institution get the majority of their funding? A lot of public schools are getting that from the government, the state, the local, the federal governments. Private schools are generally relying on their own funding, though they might get a small amount of funding from the government as well. You do want to think about the geography. Where do you want to be, whether it's in the United States or not? Do you want to be in an urban setting? Would you prefer something that's a bit more rural as well? And when you're thinking about geography, of course, you also want to think about ease of travel. Are there airports nearby? Are you going to have to travel a ways from an airport to get to your school? And that's okay, but make sure that there are resources and ways to do that. And so, thinking about the geography of the school and what you're going to be most comfortable with. Of course, size, how big or how small of an institution are you looking for? There are schools in the US, highly selective and not, that are very small, maybe only 1,000 students in total. But then you have some of the largest institutions in the US go all the way up to maybe 50,000 students or so. Rice certainly falls on the smaller side of that. We have around 4,000 undergraduates, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But what is that size that you're comfortable with? Where are you going to thrive? Of course, academic offerings. What type of major or majors are you interested in? Does a school have a wide variety of majors that if you would change your mind, that's okay? That they have other academic offerings that you could kind of switch into if you would change your mind. Of course, student life. What's there to do on campus? Of course, going to college is all about getting your education and that degree, but you're going to grow a lot and learn a lot about yourself in college. And so what activities are there to get involved in, whether that's on campus or off campus? Thinking about housing, where are you going to live? What are the opportunities maybe in the immediate area of the college? Are there things to get involved in, like concerts or going to different restaurants? What are the things that are most important to you when it comes to student life? Of course, you also want to think about finances. How much does it cost to attend an institution? What are their financial aid policies? And I'll actually dive into that just a little bit more in a couple slides as well. And so ultimately, you do want to spend a good amount of time putting together your application materials. For most highly selective institutions, we practice what's called holistic admission review. And so there's a lot of information that we're asking for. But you do want to pick an application platform. One that's most common that you have likely heard of is called the Common App. A lot of institutions in the US use that application. And so it's just kind of one application, and you get to pick the schools that you want to send the application to. But there's also other application platforms that out there as well. Some schools have their own application platform. Rice does not. We take the Common application. We also take something called the Coalition application. And so we don't have our own institution application, but some schools do. So keep an eye out for that. Of course, you'll need to send transcripts and test scores if applicable. A lot of institutions in the US and around the world are not requiring test scores this year, Rice included. But if you want to send those test scores, that's completely up to you. A lot of schools will ask for recommendation letters. These help us understand you a bit more, perhaps in the context of the classroom or in your school as a whole. But you don't want to wait too long to ask the teachers or the counselors for those recommendation letters. They might be getting asked by several students to submit recommendation letters, and so you want to give them plenty of time to go ahead and write that letter and get it submitted. And then, of course, presenting yourself in an application. This is really a big one to think about. There are essays, short answer questions. Perhaps some schools offer interviews. the activities list in an application. All of that is so valuable to us, especially when we are conducting a holistic admission review. And so again, you want to take your time doing that. With the essays and short answer questions, make sure that you're thoroughly answering the questions that are asked. The activities listing, don't be shy. Tell us everything that you can in that area. There's even an additional information section that if you feel like there's more that you want to add, you can write a little bit more. You know, this application, you know, I mentioned an interview. Perhaps there is an opportunity for you to do an interview with the school, but you know, perhaps not. The application is really going to be that opportunity for us to really learn as much about you as possible without potentially meeting you. So take your time in putting all of this together because it is so valuable to admission offices. Sorry. There we go. Of course, you want to understand and choose the right decision plan for you. So when you're looking at schools, whether they're highly selective or not, there's a couple of different decision plans you might be looking at. So your early decision, your early action, or your regular decision are your three big decision plans. Early decision is generally a binding agreement. And when you apply early decision, there's a contract that gets signed by the student, a parent, and the counselor saying that if you're admitted, you're going to attend. You'll then withdraw all of your other college applications and you're committed to attending that institution. A lot of students choose early decision if there's a school that they really want to go to. So maybe you're really interested in Rice and you will gladly attend if you're admitted. And so that's why they may select early decision. But perhaps that's not, you know, not a comfortable scenario, and that's completely okay. Just keep in mind you can only apply to one school early decision. So you just want to make sure you're picking the right school to do that with. Early action is not a binding agreement, neither is regular decision. Early action just means you're going to get your decision a little bit earlier in the process. And so with early decision, for example, at Rice, that happens, you'll apply by November 1st and then get your decision sometime in December. With early action, those timeframes can vary greatly, but you might not have to wait until, say, the new year or a little bit further into the new year to get your decision. And that's where regular decision, you're typically not getting your decision until a little bit later. So our regular decision decisions are released in March. And so you would just have to wait a little bit longer. And most institutions are kind of the same with that. Usually everybody is releasing their decisions in the US by about April 1. And so it just kind of depends on every school's individual timeframes, but you would know by that point which schools you were admitted to. You want to keep an eye out on priority deadlines. Again, whether that's for the decision plan, maybe if you're, if you choose to interview, maybe a school would ask that you submit your application a little bit earlier. So just keep an eye out on deadlines because they will vary a little bit school by school. And then of course you want to take into consideration scholarship and financial aid processes when you're deciding on the decision plan. With early decision, of course, again, that's kind of committing you to a school. And so did you look into and understand, you know, the cost and how you might be financing your education for that school? Are scholarships, you know, available if you would choose early decision, or does a school only hold those for regular decision students? I'll tell you that's not the case at Rice. Everybody who applies, regardless of early or regular decision, is eligible to, or will be reviewed for scholarships. So you just want to keep those few things in mind when you're deciding on ultimately which decision plan you're going to choose. And so moving along into that highly selective admission review. I used the phrase holistic evaluations before. And so what does that mean? So we're really going to kind of dive into that a little bit. And I do see that we have some questions here, and so I'll hold off on those. We'll certainly get to them, of course, but I'll hold off on those until I kind of wrap up the presentation, but please feel free to continue submitting them. And so highly selective institutions, as I mentioned, we're reviewing a lot more applications than what we have space for. And the percentage of students that are admitted is a lot lower than some other institutions. And so at Rice last year, we admitted 9% of the students who applied. That's not the most selective in the US though. There are some schools who are only admitting 3 or 4%. Usually your highly selective institutions are probably more like 20% and less. There's plenty of schools out there that are admitting 75% of the applicants that apply, and that's great as well. Every institution is going to be a little bit different, but these highly selective institutions often have, you know, a variety of strong programs, great facilities, and so there's schools that students really want to attend, but at the end of the day, we just don't have as many seats available as we have applications received. And so we can conduct reviews holistically. And so that means that all application components are evaluated equally. And so there's no one component that's more weighted or anything like that, because we're looking at it all. Some schools might say that, you know, with a certain test score and secondary school performance, that you're guaranteed admission into their school, and that's not the case with us. So when we practice holistic application review, yes, we're looking at those components, but we're looking very closely at everything else that you've submitted, whether it's those essays that we just talked about, the activities listing, the recommendations, etc. We're really looking at the full picture of everything that's coming together. The one thing to keep in mind, especially with holistic application review, is that admission officers are familiar with you, with your school, with your region, and really do understand your context. And so I am what's called the territory manager for India, as well as a state here in the US, Tennessee. And so I review all applications. Oops, sorry about that. I review all applications from India. I'm very familiar with the variety of curriculums that are offered within the country. I'm familiar with opportunities that may or may not be available to you, understanding that the things that you have access to are likely going to be very different than what students in different countries have access to. Also understanding that there's differences even in the cities in the, you know, within the same country. And so we use that information as well as we're reviewing applicants. We would never kind of evaluate you in the context of somebody else's situation. We're not going to expect that you have the same types of activities or perspectives as somebody else, even from within your own country. But of course, the opportunities vary greatly across different countries. And so, as I said, we really do, highly selective institutions really do value the whole picture. So first off, we do want to make sure that you have the ability to academically succeed. The highly selective institutions in the United States are typically very rigorous academic settings as well. And so we're looking for those students who have performed very well, very consistently in secondary school, because we want them to succeed on our campuses as well. We would never want to set up a student for failure by any means. In the application materials, we're going to be looking for a number of things. So are you intellectually curious, and where do those curiosities come from? What is it that you're interested in? Even if you don't have an exact idea of what you want to study, surely you have some type of path in mind, or maybe you know, I want to get to this goal, even though I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get there. And so several of the questions in the application are going to help, shine a light on this. but it can also come out in things like activities. What have you been engaged in outside of the classroom as well? So what is it that kind of has you curious, and how do you see yourself, navigating that academic path? What perspectives and experiences would you contribute? Again, going back to how the territory managers, such as myself, are familiar with your school, your region. And so what is it that you would contribute to that particular school's campus and community and the culture? We want to bring in a diverse, diverse students, but that's in such different ways. We don't want to bring in the students who have all had the same types of experiences, because we want our students to be able to learn from one another. How would you be engaged, or what impact would you have? Again, this goes back to maybe those activities listings, or maybe some of the things that your recommenders are talking about. We want students who are going to be engaged on our campus. And so how have you been engaged through secondary school? What have you been engaged in? Have you done, oh goodness, everything from athletics to volunteering? Have you done research? Have you had some type of employment? Have you been involved in debate or Model UN? So many different activities, theater, music. There's no like one or two activities that highly selective institutions will say that you have to have been involved in, because we want students who are coming in, again, with very different experiences, but we want to see that you are going to be engaged and contribute to the campus community. One of the phrases you might have heard is demonstrated interest. And so, have you shown interest in the school? And that can come across in a variety of ways. I think when some people hear the phrase demonstrated interest, they automatically think that students had to have visited that particular campus to show their interest. And that's truly not the case, especially in the world that we live in now. But how have you engaged? Have you participated in a session with a school? And as I mentioned before, I dropped that link in the chat if you're interested in more information from Rice. And that's one way to show your interest. Have you, oh goodness, the way that you respond to some of the questions in the application. Rice, for example, we actually ask you, what interests you about Rice? And so even if your research has been limited to online resources, which is completely fine, what did you find about us? What is it that really piqued your interest and made you, that excited about Rice that you decided to go ahead and submit an application? And so don't, like I said, don't think that demonstrated interest means that you had to have, visited a school, because there's so many different ways that you can learn about a school and show that interest. And so after you submit your application, what are some of the outcomes that you might receive from a highly selective institution? Kind of the first one and the last one on this list are, pretty straightforward. You're either admitted or maybe you're denied. So those are two pretty solid, definitive outcomes. The ones in the middle, first you have defer. So if you applied to a school early decision or early action, you might get a defer decision. And so that means that during that initial review, they weren't able to offer you a spot. However, they're going to defer your application to a later time, perhaps to the regular decision cycle, and look at you again at that time to make a final determination. Now it could be up to you. You could say, well, I got that defer, but I'm really not sure. I don't really want it. That's okay. But it's a great opportunity for you to continue to show your interest if you go ahead and say, yes, I'll still wait for another decision. Keeping in mind that if that's the case, that binding nature of early decision gets left. That's no longer a part of the equation. And so if you would be admitted during regular decision, it's not a binding agreement. And then you have wait list. So during regular decision, it's sort of similar, that they weren't able to offer you a spot initially, but depending on how things play out, they might be interested in extending you an offer down the road. And this is another opportunity where you kind of have to say yes or no. So do you want to, kind of wait and see what happens and take that spot on the wait list, then say yes. But if you're not interested, maybe you have some offers from other schools that you're interested in, then you don't have to go on the wait list. And so it's kind of up to you. And basically what will happen is as students accept their offers or turn them down, a school might have to go to the wait list if perhaps not enough students took that offer of admission. And so the school might reach out to those who took that spot on the wait list and ask if they would, if they would like to, come off the wait list and get an offer of admission. And so those are the four main decisions that you'll typically see from highly selective institutions, as well as other institutions as well. And I'm just at a broad level before I go into Rice-specific information, just talking about funding your education at these institutions. So as I had mentioned in the beginning, it's really important to understand financial aid policies for each institution, and they're going to vary greatly. You'll want to understand that if you are an international citizen, how does that impact your application review? At Rice, we are what's called need aware. So you see in that second bullet, need blind versus need aware admission decisions. So at Rice, we are need aware for international citizens. And that means that you'll need to submit some information to us, letting us know if you're going to be requesting need-based aid. And that information is taken into consideration when the admission decision is being made. You'll also want to understand that if you are admitted, even if a school is need aware, how much of your need is then met. So at Rice, for example, we do meet 100% of your need if you are admitted, even if you're an international citizen. And so while we are need aware, we're still meeting the need for all students who are admitted. But not all schools will be like that. So you want to make sure you understand the policies, especially for those schools that you really are committed to and you're definitely going to be applying to. You'll probably want to keep I don't know, maybe an Excel sheet or other type of tracking system to keep track of everything, not just the application components or maybe the characteristics of the school, but also required forms and documents that you have to submit. Perhaps you've heard of the CSS profile. That's a form through the College Board. It's the College Scholarship Service profile. A lot of schools might require that, so you might have to submit that. But some schools might have their own individual forms that they have to submit. You have to submit as well. So you want to make sure that you're submitting whatever it is that the school is asking for, and that might include proof of funds. So if you're telling a school that you're not applying for need-based aid, that you're able to finance your education on your own, the school will likely need to see kind of proof of those funds that you have. So really understanding what it is that a school is looking for and making sure you're collecting that documentation and submitting it in a timely fashion. And then of course you do want to think about other funding opportunities. And so are there merit-based scholarships? Does an institution even offer them? Some schools don't. Not all highly selective institutions offer merit-based scholarships. At Rice we do. So we'll automatically review you for those and let you know if you're if you're eligible for one. But understanding if a school does or doesn't have them will be really important. And then of course external scholarships. Maybe you have received a scholarship from a different company or somehow through your school. Maybe a parent's employer was able to give you a scholarship. And so the funding doesn't necessarily only have to come from that particular institution or just your family. And so where is it that you are going to be able to gather those funds from? And that can be an ongoing process as well. Once you get to an institution, they may end up having more scholarships available to you, maybe in your second or your third year. And so keep in mind that it doesn't always mean that if you don't have a scholarship from day one at an institution, that you wouldn't be able to get one down the road. And so now I will quickly, I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. And so I'm just going to go quickly into some information specifically about Rice. And so we are a comprehensive research institution with the advantages of an intimate setting. And so as I mentioned before, we have around 4,000 undergraduates. And when you think about a school of that size, you might not be expecting to have, you know, strong rankings or a number of facilities to take advantage of, or, you know, those kinds of things, but we absolutely do. And so we have a median class size of 14 and a 6-to-1 student to faculty ratio. And you're really going to get to engage with these faculty members. They'll work with you inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. You'll get to know them. Maybe you do research with them, but maybe you also just grab a cup of coffee with them in the morning and say hi to them as you're walking to class or across campus. And so we have an emphasis on undergraduate education at Rice. And we're really proud of, you know, not just our rankings. Sure, rankings are great, but they don't always tell the full picture. We're known as a supportive and a collaborative environment, and we're really proud of those characteristics. Academically, what can we offer you? We have 7 schools of study at Rice, and I'll quickly just name them. So we have engineering, natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, architecture, and music. Now, our 7th school of study is the Jones Graduate School of Business, and so that's a graduate program. However, they do have some opportunities available to our undergraduates. We have over 50 majors, over 20 minors, and so lots of flexibility there. You don't declare a major at Rice until the end of your sophomore year, unless you're coming into architecture or music. Those are 2 programs you do have to come directly into. But other than that, you have a lot of flexibility. You're not admitted directly into a major, and you have that first 1.5 to 2 years to really explore everything we can afford you. When you're talking about our curriculum, we have what's called flexible distribution requirements. So you might have heard of a core curriculum, and that's where you're taking the same classes as your peers. You might have heard of kind of an open curriculum, and that's where there's no real firm requirements. You can kind of take whatever you would like. But Rice kind of falls in the middle of that spectrum. So we require our students to take 3 classes in each of the applied sciences, the humanities, and the social sciences, plus a writing intensive course. But you get to select what classes you take to fulfill those requirements. And so it's a great way to maybe continue to foster an area of interest that you have, even though you might not be majoring in it, but you just want to grow in that area. Or it could be a great way to go down the path in a different path and take a class you've never gotten to take before. One of my favorite examples is the chemistry of cooking. And so maybe you have an interest in both the sciences and in food, and you can kind of combine the 2 together to fulfill a distribution requirement. And we do have an honor code at Rice, and it's something that our students take very seriously. You sign this as an entering student, and while it gives you, flexibilities such as being able to take take-home exams, for example, it's really kind of the basis of that culture of care and that welcoming community that our students really enjoy. It's not a cutthroat environment by any means, and this honor code is really, kind of sets that foundation to say that, I'm going to be truthful, I'm going to be honest, and you're going to be a good citizen in our community. Outside of the classroom is where a lot of learning happens at Rice. On campus alone, we have over 40 different institute centers and consortia for you to get hands-on experience with. At Rice, you can start research as early as your first semester if you would like. And certainly you can do it on campus in any of these, any of these centers, but there's opportunities off campus as well. But it's nice that our students, don't have to go too far to be able to get their hands on, some of the experience. And oftentimes I think when you think about research, you're thinking about it in, kind of the white lab coat and maybe a microscope. But research is so much more than that, and it's completed in all areas of study and not just your STEM fields. So yes, there's absolutely research going on in the humanities and social sciences as well. The heart and soul, if you will, of a Rice experience is our residential colleges. And so you might hear of dormitories at other schools, but residential colleges at Rice are where you live, it's where you'll eat. And we have 11 of them, and you'll get your assignment, before you would start a fall semester. And I mentioned that we have that collaborative and supportive student body, but the one time our students will get a little competitive with one another is in regards to the residential colleges. They have their own colors and their crests and their traditions, and they all kind of think that they're the best one on campus. So it's fun to watch those friendly rivalries go on year to year. And so they're all microcosms of the full university. Rice is continually known as one of the most diverse campuses in the United States, and that diversity is going to be represented in each residential college. So there's not a college that's just for men or women, just for students studying in natural sciences or social sciences. You're getting everybody within your residential college. And this is inclusive of everyone from first-year students all the way up to seniors. Every residential college has their own student government, they have their own budget, and so these are primarily student-run entities, but there is a lot of guidance along the way as well, so students aren't alone by any means in running those residential colleges. And as I had mentioned, we are proud of a lot of the rankings that we have. There was actually, I spotted one of the first questions that we have as far as US News and rankings. Are they a reliable way to gauge the quality of a US university? They're helpful, but I wouldn't make your decision based on those rankings, because what's important to you might not be reflected in those rankings. And so while they might be a good resource to look at, and it might open you up to different schools that you're considering, I wouldn't suggest basing where you're going to apply on those rankings. They're a useful tool, but they shouldn't be used to make your final list. You should make your list built on what's of most importance to you. Of course, on campus, there's a lot to do. You'll get involved in your residential college. They have different activities and events and movie series and academic programming, but you'll get involved outside or on campus in other ways as well. We have well over 200 clubs and organizations for you to get involved in, and you can see that they really cover just about every topic that you can come up with. If there's a club that you're interested in that we don't have, you can absolutely create your own. It's a pretty easy process, and it's probably why we have as many as we do at this point. But our students certainly are not aren't lacking opportunities to get engaged. I mentioned the 11 residential colleges and how they all have their own individual governments, but you can see that we have 12 in total, because there is another student government that's a bit more campus encompassing. So lots of opportunities to get involved in leadership activities. Maybe you're interested in music or theater. We can absolutely, get you connected to those types of organizations. But the one that I'm kind of most proud of at Rice is that community service participation number. Our students are very interested in giving back to the community, not just the immediate community, but the world around them. And so the vast majority of our students are getting involved in some type of community service while they're at Rice. And that's something that we're really proud of. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are located in Houston, Texas, which is the 4th largest city in the United States, and it's the most diverse city in the country. Most people aren't aware of that. We have over 6 million residents, and we're a pretty spread out city overall. You can see 56,000 acres of parks. So it's a very green city. Even though it's very big, there's lots of open spaces. We have plenty of athletic teams and arts companies in the city. We're the energy capital of the world. We're home to the world's largest medical center. It's actually called the Medical Center, and it's right next to campus. It is literally one street away from campus, and so we can make connections for students there. NASA's Johnson Space Center is about 35 minutes from campus, and Rice sold the land for Johnson Space Center to NASA for $1, just one US dollar. And so we have great connections there as well. So the city of Houston, our students are very engaged with during their time, and there's so much to take advantage of. Of course, you probably are interested in some kind of outcomes information, and so you can see the breakdown of where our students are going and what they're doing upon graduation, and just a few examples of the places that our students go on to work for. And our Center for Career Development is really crucial in helping set our students up for success. We have 2 different career fairs on campus each year where employers are coming right to campus to talk with our students about internships and job opportunities. And so by no means is it only on you to help secure an internship or a job opportunity. You're going to have a lot of connections to help you do that. We have, so just going into some admission information and financial aid to wrap things up. We have 2 decision plans at Rice. We already covered kind of what they mean. So we have early decision and regular decision. We do not have early action at Rice. So just these 2, not the 3. And you can see the deadlines here of when you need to apply. And of course, those deadlines are also on our website. So what information are we looking for? How do you actually apply? What are the nuts and bolts? So as I mentioned before, we take the Common App and the Coalition application. We also take an application called QuestBridge, but you just pick one of those. You're not submitting all 3 by any means, just one. There is an application fee, and then we also need some official documentation. So your high school transcript has to come directly from your school's office. So we need that official copy, and they should be familiar with how they can get that to us. If you're using, for example, like the Common App, there's a tool that they have that they can upload an electronic copy to us. I had mentioned previously that a lot of schools in the US are not requiring test scores this particular year due to the impacts of testing from COVID. And so this year, the SAT or ACT is not required, same with subject tests as well. But if you want to report them, you absolutely can, and they can be self-reported. If you do report them though, keep in mind that we will, not only will we use those scores to evaluate you, but then we will need official scores at some point if you are admitted and accept your offer to attend. So while you can self-report through the application process if you so choose, we will need those official scores at some point, if you, like I said, if you're admitted and choose to attend. Proof of English proficiency, if necessary. Typically coming out of India, you don't, because we consider English one of your native languages. But you know, if it's necessary where English is not a native tongue, then we would need proof of proficiency. We do require recommendations, 1 from your counselor and 2 from teachers. And so as I mentioned before, you want to ask them in advance, make sure you give them enough of advance notice so they're not scrambling at the last minute. You want to give them plenty of time to submit those letters. You can have up to 4 total recommendations with Rice though. And if you'd like to submit that, you know, that optional 4th one, you can absolutely do that. It's completely up to you. And we suggest maybe considering somebody you know, who isn't a teacher or somebody who knows you in that context, maybe somebody who can speak to you in a different light. So maybe it's, a supervisor from an internship or research that you did, maybe a religious leader, somebody else from the community, again, who can speak to you in a different way than what the academic recommendations might have done. We do offer optional interviews, and right now you can register for those on our website. Those interviews fill up pretty quickly though, but there will be more opportunities to interview down the road. So if you don't get one that's already on our website, you can request one there are our alumni volunteers. And so all interviews this year will be done virtually. And so whether you're able to sign up for one, you know, in the immediate, or one would happen down the road, a couple of different options there. We do have some additional information depending on some of the programs that you're applying to. So music requires an audition, architecture requires a portfolio, and we do have a BSMD program. It's an 8-year program in conjunction with the Baylor College of Medicine that requires a supplemental application as well. And that asks just a few more essay style questions. As I mentioned before, we conduct a holistic review of students. And so we're looking not just at the numbers and the academic performance, but rather everything. So yes, we want to see that you'll succeed, but we also want to see that you've been engaged and how you've been engaged, because that's a little telling of how you'll be engaged on our campus. What type of perspectives are you going to, you know, contribute to our campus? And what types of talents do you have? Where are your academic interests and personal interests as well? Because again, we don't want all of our students to kind of have that same perspective, the same academic experiences and desires, because having a more diverse student body really just makes the experience that much more rich. We do have merit-based scholarships. And we review you holistically for those as well, and you're automatically evaluated for those. So there's no additional forms that you have to complete. And so keeping in mind that same holistic review, we're not looking for a certain set of academic criteria or anything like that. We're really looking at that bigger picture. And as I mentioned before, whether you apply early decision or regular decision, you're evaluated for merit scholarships, as well as if you're an international citizen or a US citizen. So just a little bit of financial aid information here. As I mentioned previously, we are need aware for international citizens, but if you're not an international citizen, we're need blind. And when you'll need to submit some forms when applying for aid. If you're a US citizen, you'll submit what's called the FAFSA. Regardless of your citizenship, you'll have to submit the CSS profile. And then there's some other forms that you'll need to complete as well. We actually provide you with a checklist that you can keep track of, and it tells you what exactly you do need to submit. And it'll show when we receive them as well. So that's a nice helpful tool that we're able to give students. I really encourage students to visit our financial aid website. It's rich with information and so many different tools and resources to help you kind of calculate and understand what the cost might be for you. Of course, we have our tuition and room and board, and then some other fees. But you also want to keep in mind personal expenses when you're looking at any school, to be honest. And if you're coming from India, things like the flight and how many times are you going to come home. And so you want to make sure that you're thinking about those pieces as you're calculating your cost. Like I said, not just for Rice, but any institution in the US. And so, like I said, I wanted to make sure that we left some time here. And so I know we had some questions. Let me see if I can get the Q&A back, and perhaps I'll stop sharing my screen at this point. So that we can, hello. So I can go ahead and answer some of these questions here. So one of the questions would be, is Rice test optional this year? As I mentioned, yes, we're not requiring testing. It is completely up to you. And if you happened, one thing to keep in mind, if you happen to send us your scores, maybe you took an SAT administration maybe in March before everything got shut down, or earlier in your junior year, and you happen to send those scores to Rice in advance, but ultimately you choose to not have those scores reviewed, that's completely fine. It'll be based upon what you tell us in the application. A question about the Rice box. So one of the questions in our supplement is the box. And in all honesty, it's completely up to you what you submit there. It's a picture of something that is meaningful to you. We've seen everything from pictures of family and friends to pictures of food, maybe drawings that students have done. You know, a little bit of everything is in there. So it's just something, you know, a way to tell us a little bit more about yourself in a picture form, rather than using words. Question about the interview process for first-year students. As I mentioned, keep in mind with our interviews, they're optional. So if you choose not to go down that path, that's completely fine. But they're also not guaranteed. It just depends on the amount that we're able to accommodate year to year. One thing that we're really proud of is that we continually hear how our interviews, while they are, you know, they are evaluative, we're going to take that information into consideration. We constantly get feedback that it's a very comfortable process. We don't want you to feel like you're walking into an interview with a Fortune 500 company when you're in grade 12. You know, you do want to be prepared, but you're going to talk with your interviewer about everything from your academic and non-academic interests, but you're also going to get to ask the interviewer questions yourself and maybe learn a little bit more about Rice. So I would, like I had just said, be prepared. You don't have to send a resume or anything like that in advance to your interviewer, but don't stress out. It's typically a very comfortable and conversational type setting. Let's see here. So a question about how many international students are accepted as part of the acceptance rate. So what I can say is that our student body is about 13% international. And so that's actually a pretty nice amount, especially when you're comparing it maybe to some other institutions. Indian students particularly, that can vary year to year. I'll absolutely say that. And I'm comfortable saying that because I'm that territory manager. On our website, it does actually break down where students came from. And so I'm just going to pull that up very quickly here so I can give you the exact numbers. And I will share this link with you as well. So this is our class profile. And last year, so this is for last year's class. Last year we enrolled 6 students from India. I can tell you that we admit more than that. And so it's just a matter of students accepting that offer. And so keep in mind that was just to this particular class. And so with multiple classes here, you know, we certainly have a lot more than 6 students from India. A question about financial aid and scholarships for international students. Yep, as I mentioned, while we are need aware for international citizens, if you're admitted, we will still meet all of your need and you're certainly eligible for merit-based aid as well. A question about if you're waitlisted, what are the chances that you come off of it? That's going to vary every year. There have been years that I've been at Rice where we didn't take anybody off the wait list. There have been years where we've taken maybe 3 or 4 off the wait list, and then there's been years where we've taken, you know, quite a few more than that. It's really situational and just depends on the particular year. So the need blind versus need aware. That means that will a school look at your ability to finance an education as part of the admission process? And so for US citizens, we're need blind. For international citizens, we are need aware, and that's why we'll ask for additional information about your finances that we'll look at as part of the application process. But every school is different. There are some schools in the US who are need aware for US citizens as well. And so you'll just want to make sure that you understand each school's approach to that. And yep, the kind of a follow-up question there, do US universities require financial proof? Again, that'll depend school by school. and what that proof is. Maybe it's a bank statement or something along those lines. And you'll still need to submit some of those financial forms like the CSS profile to also help us understand what your full need is. And then, because then that helps us know how much we may need to be providing to you. A question about applying as an undeclared student, is it a disadvantage? You actually can't apply to Rice as undecided or undeclared. You do have to select an area of interest, but like I said, you're not admitted into that area that you tell us you're interested in, and you don't declare a major until the end of your sophomore year. And similarly, you know, if you would tell us that you're interested in engineering or science or something like that, the programs aren't more competitive than another. So I get that question a lot. So tell us what you're interested in, and we will go from there. A question about AP and IB credit policies. We absolutely accept credits for both, and I will send you another link here. Generally speaking, it's a 4 or a 5 on an AP exam. IB is a 6 or a 7 on higher levels, higher level exams. And so you can see the full policies on our registrar's website that I just popped in there. And I know we're getting down to the last couple of minutes here, so thank you so much for your questions. Hopefully I can get to all of them.
Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please take your time. I know there are a lot of questions, so please take your time. There's no problem if we extend the session. Thank you.
Okay, sure, great. We talked a little bit about the current Indian student population, as well as a question about Indian alumni. Our students are very connected as well, let me say that. So we have a number of clubs and organizations, like I said, and a lot of them are related to you know, the countries that students come from. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be the only students that are in that club. And so you might have students from the US who join things like the Indian Student Association. And so there's a lot of different ways that our students and alumni stay connected to each other. You usually find your communities pretty quickly once you get to campus. Which application process offers a holistic review, Common App or Coalition? It's either. No matter which application platform you choose, it's going to be a holistic application, a holistic review, no matter what. A question about subject tests. What would we recommend as a business major with a minor in political science? Keep in mind, our business major is limited to managerial studies, and then we have a business minor. So depending on what it is that you want to major in specifically, we may or may not have what you're looking for. If you're going to submit subject tests, we generally do suggest that at least one of them is in the area that you intend to study. Now, business is a little different because there's not exactly an SAT subject test for that area, but perhaps something in the math realm would be good there. If you're looking at engineering, maybe you want to take some of the science or math subject tests. So trying to relate it as closely as you can. But again, we understand that there are some majors that we offer that just simply don't line up. And in that case, then you can certainly choose whichever tests that you would like. So a question about the CSS profile. And so that's in regards to the financial aid process. In all honesty, it's a form that goes a little bit deeper than what my personal knowledge is. And I wouldn't want to give you the incorrect information. What I'll do is another link that I can share with you is our financial aid website. And that will go into more detail about those forms. And there's also contact information there. And so if you have a question about it, please feel free to reach out to them. And as I also mentioned, that CSS profile is a College Board form. And so if you are familiar with the SAT and have an account there, you know, you can navigate to the College Board's website to to investigate the CSS profile a bit further. Oh, sure. Okay, so the next question is about campus safety, as well as information about Houston. So campus is certainly very safe. We have our own police department on campus, and they patrol constantly. We have a variety of entrances to campus, but the majority of them are actually locked at certain times of the night, so it's very secure. We have phone stations kind of all over campus, and they're lit up with a blue light on top, so they're easily identifiable. So if you would ever need to call the police department, you can do that pretty quickly, and they'll get to you immediately. And that's not, you know, maybe there's not a particular situation that's making you feel unsafe, but maybe you end up in the library, you know, studying until 11 o'clock at night, and would like to have, you know, somebody come pick you up and take you home. And so it's there as a resource, you know, not just in emergency situations. I'm on campus a lot. At different times of the morning and late at night, and I've always felt very comfortable there. Sure, we are in a large city, and there is, you know, you can expect that, you know, there might be some, you know, some activity, but largely speaking, I would say oh gosh, maybe, I mean, we have such a, like I said, the collaborative and supportive student environment. Like if you, you know, maybe don't walk away from your laptop in the library before asking, you know, somebody, hey, can you just keep an eye on this while I, you know, run to use the restroom? Because if you ask somebody, they'll watch it for you. It happens all the time, but it's a very safe place. We don't really have, you know, major crimes that happen on our campus. And then, of course, the city of Houston, again, from the crime perspective, you have your standard city crime, but it doesn't, you know, really bleed into campus. But the city of Houston is amazing. I love it. There's so much to do, so much to experience, from the different food and cuisines to cultural events. We have a huge museum district, which is right next to campus, and students get free access to some of the museums there. So there's never a shortage of things to do in the city. Okay, just a couple last questions here. So a question about maybe the breakdown of the curriculum and how many subjects are sort of general education based and more, you know, other classes that are more for the major. I know the specifics were the major of science and a minor of cinema and media arts. But largely speaking, really for any major, as I mentioned, we have those flexible distribution requirements. 3 classes in each of the social sciences, applied sciences, and humanities, plus a writing intensive course in your first year. So that's actually 10 classes. And so that's the equivalent of about 30 credits. Outside of that, the vast majority of your classes are going to be major related. There might be, you know, an extra elective here or there, but the majority of the classes that you're going to be taking are going to be applicable to your major or your minor. A question about students entering the job market or pursuing further education. So around 50% of students will go on into work, and around 40% of students will go on to further their education. And so, so it's a pretty equal split. And then that remaining 10% of students, they go on into opportunities, maybe like the military, maybe something like the Peace Corps or similar experiences like that. Or perhaps when they were surveyed, they just weren't sure at the time. It's certainly not that they don't have any opportunities. They're just going into, you know, a different field, or just didn't know what they were doing when we asked them. Okay, I have 2 final questions here. And the first one is, when are you opening the application process for next year? The application processes kick off August 1st of every year. And so if you are in grade 11, grade 10, it's always August 1 of your grade 12. And then one final question If you're able to share details about your essays on the Common App and what you're looking for. So I will, again, drop another link so you can see the questions specifically. But our supplement asks 3 questions and then the box question. And you can see the questions in detail on this website. This website does say first-year domestic applicants, but it's applicable for international citizens as well. And it's towards the bottom under the section called Rice Supplement. And the questions, actually maybe if I share my screen quickly so we can all look at them together. So the questions here, please explain why you wish to study in the academic areas you selected. The second one is more around the elements of the Rice experience, what appeals to you. And then the third is really about the perspectives that you'll contribute to the Rice community. As I mentioned, we're really about community at Rice and really about bringing in a diverse group of experiences and perspectives. And so this just dives a bit deeper into kind of who you are and why you're interested in Rice. As I talked about demonstrated interest previously, it doesn't mean that you had to have come to campus, but this question, that question number 2 there, is a great way to show us why you're interested and kind of how you developed in your interest, because we're really looking for students who are genuinely interested in Rice. We're not looking for students who are just trying to, adding us to a list because maybe we have good rankings and that's about it and they don't really know us. We want students who really value the opportunities that we're going to afford them, and for those students who clearly have an understanding about what Rice is, who Rice is. And so you can also see the academic areas. That's a great opportunity for you to tell us, why you chose those areas you did. Maybe tell us that you chose them, but you're still not entirely sure, and that's okay too. It just gives us a deeper understanding of kind of what path you could potentially go down. So those are the 3 questions. And then one last question here, and then we can wrap up. As a class 12 student, will my admission be impacted? Because students deferred for this year because of the current pandemic. And that's a great question, and it's certainly one you should be asking of all the schools that you're looking at. At Rice, no, it won't impact the amount of students that we'll take in future years. And to be entirely honest with you, while we have had more students defer this year than we typically have, or that we typically get in any given year, it's still not a major amount. And I'm very proud of the way that Rice has been responding to COVID and reopening this fall. Things are going very smoothly so far, so I'm really excited about that. But no, the number of students that we're going to be able to take in future years will not be impacted by the number that we've had defer for this year. And that took us to all of the questions. So thank you all so much for submitting them. And with that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me. I know we went a little bit longer, and I'm quite all right with that. I hope everybody was able to stay on as long as possible. And I certainly enjoyed this time. Kunal, thank you so much for having me. I would be glad, to talk with anybody. I will put that one link in there one more time, just in case you missed it at the beginning. If you're interested in more information about Rice, you can go ahead and submit that form. I'll also put in an email address and my name. It does seem like, I understand it seems like a general email address, admission@rice.edu, but it'll actually get filtered directly to me, and it's just an easier way for us to keep track of some of the emails. So if you want to reach out, please feel free to use that.
Thank you so much, Taryn. I think this was such an insightful and engaging session. I really enjoyed it, and such unique perspectives, and of course, very detail oriented. Thank you for sharing more information, not only about the session topic, but also about Rice University, as well as Of course, there was a lot of interest, as I mentioned earlier, leading up to the session. So thank you so much for your kind time and, of course, your valuable time at a very busy time of the year for you. To 12th grade students, parents, and high school counselors who are joining in, we, of course, know it's very late in the evening. It's around 9 p.m. here in India. So thank you so much for joining this session and for engaging so actively and with so much enthusiasm for your kind time as well. Um, an important message to the high school counselors: this session is recorded, as we shared earlier, during our online schedule and outreach campaigns. So a link will be shared with you. Please ensure that it can be shared with other students as well who would be interested to learn about Rice University, and with parents as well who were unable to attend this session in the evening due to the schedule, so that they may continue the conversations directly with Taryn and continue to keep in touch with her for months to come, as it's an important time of the year. But thank you so much, Taryn. Once again, truly appreciate your kind time. We know it was in the morning time out there. Hope it was not too early. Once again, really appreciate it. And we wish you the very best. Look forward to keeping in touch with you. And please take care and stay safe.
Thank you. You as well. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Students, parents, I'll just be online for next few minutes because I know Ms. Taryn has shared a few links, so you can easily open them up in your web browser. So I'll just stick around for a few minutes. And then, of course, wish you a pleasant evening as well. Please take care, stay safe, everyone, and look forward to keeping in touch with everyone out here. Thank you. Good day. Take care. Bye-bye.